The Siberian taiga stretched out in all directions like a frozen ocean of pine. Snow blanketed every branch, muffling sound and motion, turning the world into a vast, quiet expanse. In the heart of it, far from roads or villages, stood a small hand-built cabin, barely visible through the trees and thick snow. Inside, a fire crackled. A pot of soup simmered slowly, casting steam into the cold air. Hunched beside it, carefully chopping dried herbs, was Lena, a 12-year-old girl with sharp eyes and calloused hands. Her hair was tucked under a fur-lined cap, and her cheeks were pink from the morning cold. She moved with a quiet confidence, learned, not given. Her grandfather, Yakov, was bundled in a wool blanket in a nearby cot, his breathing raspy. Pneumonia again. The winter had been brutal, and the forest less forgiving than usual. Lena laid the herbs into the pot, stirred, and then stood up to gather her coat and satchel. "Where are you going?" Yakov's voice was weak but concerned. "To get more fire root and dry moss. You need them for your lungs," she replied gently, fastening the buttons of her oversized coat. "It's too cold. Take the rifle," he rasped. "I won't be long," she said, smiling faintly. She didn't take the rifle. Outside, the air was sharp, every breath visible in white clouds. Lena moved silently through the snow, her feet knowing the path by instinct. The taiga was her home. She knew its turns, its seasons, its moods. It could be cruel, but it had raised her ever since the accident took her parents. She remembered that night vividly. Flashing lights, the deafening crunch of metal, and then nothing but silence. After that, it was just her and Yakov, and the forest. The wild had become her school, her healer, and, strangely, her protector. A light wind blew, rustling the pines. Somewhere nearby, a low grunt echoed through the trees. Lena paused. A familiar sound, not threatening, not unfamiliar. She turned her head and smiled. On a small hill to her left, nearly camouflaged against the tree trunks, stood Misha. The bear, massive, broad-shouldered, his fur shaggy and speckled with snow. He watched her with deep brown eyes, calm, steady, and watchful. "Good morning," Lena whispered. 2 years ago, she had found him crying beside the body of his mother, a victim of poachers. The cub had been no bigger than a husky, trembling and barely alive. She'd carried him in a blanket back to the cabin, fed him from a dropper, slept beside him for weeks. She named him Misha, after a story her father once told her. Since then, the bear had grown to nearly 600 pounds, taller than any man, and yet with her he remained gentle. Not tame, not trained, just bonded. Misha didn't follow her closely. He kept his distance, always just far enough to melt into the trees. But he was there, always. She gave him a small nod and continued. Lena moved deeper into the forest toward a hidden grove where fireroot grew beneath tree roots. Her steps were light and fast, her gloved hands brushing away snow to expose the orange strands she needed. She worked quickly. The wind shifted, and then a crunch. Her hand froze mid-reach. That wasn't an animal. Too heavy, too deliberate. She slowly stood upright, scanning the forest. Nothing. Still, something had changed. The air felt tighter, as if the forest was holding its breath. She moved again, faster this time, snapping off the rest of the root she needed, tucking it into her satchel. She turned to head back to the cabin. That's when she saw them. Boot prints. 4 sets, freshly carved into the snow. Big, heavy. Not hers, not Yakov's, and definitely not something from the forest. Her heart jumped. No one should be out here. No one ever came this far unless they were hunting or hiding something. She knelt to study them. 3 of the sets moved in a tight formation. 1 circled slightly behind the others. Tracking something? No, someone. She didn't like the way her stomach turned. She stood and started walking. Faster, eyes darting. Snow fell gently. The trees creaked. And then, a shadow. Just behind the tree line to her right. Brief, quick, gone the moment she looked. Her breath caught. This time she ran. She knew the paths. She zigzagged through the trees, moving like wind between trunks and snowbanks. The satchel bounced at her side, but behind her, crunch, crunch, crunch. Someone was following. She couldn't go to the grove. It was too far, and she couldn't lead them to the cabin either. But she was already halfway there. Her mind raced. Maybe if she reached the clearing, Misha would... The thought was cut off as she broke through the tree line into the snowy opening in front of the cabin, and stopped cold. 3 men stood in a line ahead of her, all masked, all dressed in thick, mismatched gear, military, maybe hunting. Their faces were hidden behind balaclavas, but their eyes were clear, cold, confident, predatory. Lena took a slow step back. From behind her, a 4th man stepped out. She was surrounded. One of the men, tallest, with a scar visible beneath his mask, tilted his head. His voice was calm, amused. "There's nowhere left to run, little girl." She spun on her heel and ran, away from the cabin, away from her grandfather, straight into the trees. Snow flew up around her boots as she darted back into the woods, lungs burning with the sudden cold. Behind her, the masked men shouted, surprised. "Don't let her get away." Their footsteps pounded after her, clumsy and loud compared to her quick, practiced movements. Lena didn't look back. Her only thought, I can't let them find Grandpa. I have to lead them away. Branches whipped at her face and she ducked low under a fallen log. Her satchel snagged on a root, tearing, but she didn't stop. The forest opened up in a slope ahead, downward. She remembered this part of the woods. A narrow trail led to a frozen stream and then up toward an old hollow cave, where she used to hide during blizzards as a little girl. And Misha knew that place too. She ran harder. Flashback. 2 winters ago, the cub had been half dead. Its mother, shot and skinned by poachers, left in the snow like trash. Lena had found it curled beside her, whimpering, shaking. She remembered placing her hands around its tiny, icy body. "You're not alone," she had whispered. She had fed it warm goat's milk from a soaked cloth, talked to it through the nights, and kept it alive by sheer stubbornness. Misha grew fast, too fast, but he never forgot her. A gunshot cracked behind her. It hit a tree to her left, splintering bark. She flinched but didn't stop. One of them was armed, maybe more than one. "Get her," a voice shouted. "We don't have time for games." Lena's boot caught under a buried root, but she kept her balance. Her legs ached, lungs felt like fire, but she refused to slow down. Flashback. Last spring. Wolves had crept near the cabin at dusk, drawn by the scent of drying meat. Lena had gone out to bring in the laundry when she saw them, 6 of them, lean and snarling. She froze. Then, the trees shifted. A blur of brown thundered from the brush, snarling with primal rage. Misha had slammed into the alpha with such force that the others scattered in panic. He had saved her then, without hesitation. Back in the present, Lena weaved through a narrow pass in the rocks. But she was slowing. Behind her, the closest man, young, fast, angry, was gaining. She tried to turn, to switch directions, but his hand grabbed her coat, yanking her backward with brutal force. She screamed and twisted, kicking at him. Her elbow caught him in the chin. He cursed, grabbing again. She broke free, but not cleanly. Her coat tore at the sleeve, and she stumbled forward off balance, tumbling down a slope she didn't see coming. She crashed into snow and ice, rolled, hit a rock with her shoulder, and slid into a narrow ravine. The cold knocked the wind from her lungs. Above her, the man cursed again. The others appeared behind him, now all converging at the top of the slope. There she is. Lena scrambled to her feet, shoulder throbbing. She backed up until her back hit a large fallen tree. Snow dusted her hair, her eyelashes. Her breath came in short, harsh gasps. The men slowly began descending the slope. Their faces were calm now, predatory. "You made this harder than it needed to be," one said. "Don't hurt her," another grunted. "She's just a kid." "She saw our faces," said the tallest one. "No witnesses." One of them stepped closer, boots crunching in deliberate steps. Lena tried to stand taller, tried not to cry. And then the world changed. A low, guttural growl rolled through the trees like thunder. It came from everywhere and nowhere. The men froze. What the hell was that? Another growl, closer, deeper. Lena didn't move. She knew that sound. Her eyes widened, tears forming, but not from fear this time. The trees above the slope began to sway, heavy snow falling from branches. Then, out of the shadows between the trunks, Misha appeared. He was bigger than any of them had imagined. Easily 8 feet tall, standing upright, his shoulders wide as a car's hood. Muscles rippled beneath his winter-thick fur, and his black eyes were locked on the men. He stood still, except for the slow rise and fall of his chest. "What the?" one of the men whispered. "Is that a bear?" Misha stepped forward, slow, deliberate. Each footfall sounded like the thud of an axe into wood. "Shoot it!" the scar-faced man yelled, raising his rifle, but his hands were shaking. Lena's voice rang out, clear, firm, trembling with emotion. "Don't." The man hesitated. Misha stopped just a few feet away, halfway down the slope now, blocking the only exit out. His growl deepened. And this time, it was a warning. The man with the gun fired. The shot went wide, slamming into a tree behind Misha. The bear roared, a sound so loud it seemed to shake the snow loose from the branches. The masked men stumbled backward. Misha charged.